welcome everyone. We have LSAT Can't Win, also known as Glenn, here with us. Glenn is a longtime 7Sager and he scored a 171 on the December test and is currently in the process of applying to law school. Glenn, can you say hi to everyone?
Yeah. How's it going, everybody? My name's Glenn. 171, as JY said.
Glenn, so first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this. Everyone is here because they want to hear about your story. They want to learn how you study for the LSAT, how you managed to pull off that really awesome score. But before we get to that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah. I'm not a traditional student. Many of you are aware, probably. I'm pretty vocal about this on the forums. I went to college right after high school, didn't do very well at all. Decided I need to change, so I joined the United States Marine Corps. I did 4 years, served in Okinawa. Um, was doing schooling there too, but the deployments kind of got in the way of my grades still. After I got out, I worked for a couple years and went back to school. I got a 4.0 once I was out, so I have a very weird transcript. I've worked everywhere from like Best Buy to some superior courts in California and things like that. So I have a decent work experience. Um, yeah, that's basically me. I don't really do anything for fun other than game.
Other than playing games, you said?
Yeah, I game all the time. Monster Hunter is my
Uh,
my addiction right now.
so you and Daniel should get together.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've already talked a few times about games.
Um, Seems to be a correlation now with at least two data points of playing video games and getting a really good LSAT score. So okay, so you joined the Marine Corps. So did you take a break during your schooling to do that?
I did. When I was in Japan, I had a lot of free time. We were locked down to base most of the time because of international incidents and people getting in trouble. So we had online schooling that we could do there. So I was still kind of trying to finish my prereqs for transfer there. But I didn't have control over my schedule. So it was actually, my transcript got hurt even worse by that because I was deployed without any warning. And that hit my transcript pretty hard as well. So it was hard to do. It's hard to work full time like that and be a student.
I see.
Yeah.
But you said you managed to pull off a 4.0 GPA.
Yeah. So the obviously my cumulative is terrible. It's a 2.8 or something. They went higher now, but there's a very clear line from 2007, 2008, 2009, where my GPA was like a 1.5, and then when I went back to school, when I got my degree, I got like 70 units of straight A's. So
Oh,
I
I
have a
see.
very weird, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you might want to talk about that in your application. I know you're applying now. Have
Mhm.
you thought about or have you already written an addendum to talk about that?
Yes, I have. My addendum was longer, probably than most people's, because there was a lot to talk about when it came to my transcript. I mean, it was a 10-year long transcript. But I did, and I've blanketed the T14 pretty much, and I have about 16 schools total I've applied to. Um, I didn't realize this, but the application part is less fun than the LSAT for me. I think I like the LSAT better than I liked all this writing about myself, and I'm not very good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really tough. Yeah, I remember when I had to write my personal statement, it took me months. It was very difficult. Yeah, because it just wasn't clear. That's like it's pretty clear. You know what you have to do.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
it was very similar for me.
Yeah. So are you all done? Are your apps all in or are you still working on?
They're in. I kind of am just stress applying at this point. I'm not heard from anybody and nothing's moved, so it just makes me want to apply to more schools. Where I work, I've had some people tell me that I should just shoot for Yale anyway, even though it's probably not. So I might send Yale an app. But I think they're due the 28th, and they're such a weird school that they don't care about the timeline, they say. And so I might try Yale. Why
Right.
not?
Yeah. Yeah. I always say just you just gotta carpet your apples, just apply everywhere. It's because it's a roll of the dice. Your numbers are interesting. I mean, 171 is above most schools, uh, medians for sure. Even some schools, 75 probably, right? Some of the T14 75. Um, but
But
your
my
GPA,
GPA doesn't touch anybody's 25th even
yes.
close.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so well, let's talk about your LSAT study. So how did that like first of all, how long was the process?
Longer than I anticipated when I first started. I my first thing I did was I thought the LSAT was just like any other standardized test. I test pretty well with like the SAT and tests like that. I thought I could just take one summer course, so I did, um, and I adamantly think that that is not the way to teach the LSAT. It's working in groups is fine, but teaching to 20 kids at once when each one needs a specialized approach to how they think, it just doesn't work. And I didn't get what I needed out of that course. So I went in taking my first test and I got a 157, and that was only up 6 points from my diagnostic score. From there, I joined 7Sage, and I'm kind of an oddball because logic games I'd learned through, and it never really touched it again. I kept their method, and maybe it was like a natural affinity to them, because I'm pretty quick with them, and I'm kind of I say I'm blunt force. I do the setup and then I go straight to the questions and I try everything, and I try it quick, and I memorize the rules. I don't ever look back. The rules are in my head.
That's
Um,
incredible. Yeah.
it's yeah, and I that's why I don't like giving advice so much because of the way I do logic games. I feel uncomfortable because I can't really even say what I'm doing.
Right,
So
right.
anyway, I did 7 Sage, and it took me
Wait,
about a year.
sorry, Glenn. I just wanted, so you're saying that when you got your 157, your logic games was already close to perfect?
It was, except for my first test was September 2016, and the virus game really, really hurt me.
Oh, I see, I
Um,
see.
that one I wasn't, and then when I went back and saw there was the letter S was the key to everything. That hurt because I knew I could have seen it. So I was not perfect. I don't want to say I was perfect, but I had a decent understanding. My LR was my worst by far.
Right, right. I see. So had you had some other test as your official test, you probably would have gotten better than a 157 on your first official take, right?
I think so. I think I would have hit the 160s at least.
Right, right, right. But that's still amazing that like you're hitting a 160 with a perfect on the logic games, and it's the other sections that are depressing your score. I mean, amazing in the sense that like it's almost kind of discouraging because
Yeah,
logic games tend to be like the easiest to improve upon, right?
it was very discouraging,
It's
especially
like
when you read
yeah, it's
forms.
like I already got the low hanging fruit. I already got the low hanging fruit points now.
Yep, that's exactly what it was. And I think I don't I think I don't want to just bash on, but they don't teach the LR and reading comp in a way that I didn't understand it, and it was winging it. Um,
Mm,
so I think that one really
mm.
kind of hurt me. It was just gut instinct when I went into that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you found us
Yes.
when you did. Okay, so and then about so just one more point about your logic games, and then we can continue. I hesitate to tell people to like memorize the rules,
Yeah.
um, because I find it kind of challenging. But I do want to. It's like it is incredibly helpful if you can just look at the rules and capture all of it, like just memorize all of it. It's very, very helpful. It's much faster if you're able to do that. Like it's much faster, yeah, when you have to make inferences from them.
Yes. I posted about this a couple weeks ago. I began to notice with logic games on my own before I touched 7 Sage. It's a inference lead to inferences. So rule 1 plus 2 will lead to, it's like a pyramid, and it leads to another inference, and then those two inferences will lead to a third. And the questions they're asking about those second and third inferences. They don't want the surface level stuff. They want the deeper stuff.
Yeah.
And once I saw that, by memorizing the rules, I knew that I don't care about the rules so much. I want to know how the rules play together, and I want to
Yeah.
know what the board looks like. Those are my two
Yeah.
most important things.
Yeah.
So I think memorizing did help in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you shouldn't shy away from telling people about the way in which you do logic games. I mean, we have at least one data point saying it's helpful for you, it's helpful, right? So, I'm sure if it's helpful for you, it's helpful for at least some large number of people. So and maybe I should also start well, not shying away from telling people that just to try to straight up memorize the rules because it is very helpful to do.
Yep. And then of course the amount of that I've done. I mean, it's not like I didn't do a ton of logic games. I did a ton. I didn't necessarily follow the foolproof method exactly. I didn't know what it was before I was already pretty decent with the logic games. Um, but just exposure, and there were tests where it was a new game, but it sounds cliche because every master of the LSAT and whatever says it, but you know it. You've seen that inference before. It's you're there, and it's like I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really new. Okay, so I do want to continue with the rest of your else essay, but Lady Macbeth asked a question, and she says, "Whenever I try to straight up memorize the rules, I get paranoid and don't know if I can trust myself. End up looking at the rules anyway and wasting time."
um, that is the key to the LSAT right there. I mean, trust yourself.
Yeah.
I've questioned myself. Even now, I don't feel like I have a 171 in the books, and I feel like I'm terrible at this test. But you need to, when you're actually sitting there and it's exam time, it's game time, you need to trust yourself. And that's true for every section. It's not just true for logic games or one type of question in LR. It's the whole test. You need to have confidence, and you get to that confidence level by doing it a ton. Exposure to this test is very important. Not over. No, don't just PT. Of course, you're wasting material at that point. But knowing the way the test works is just as important as knowing how to find the right answer, and then having
Yeah.
faith in yourself and being calm. That's
Yeah.
my biggest takeaway. Be calm.
Yeah. Be calm. Yeah, for sure. Do you do the logic like so like I can't say how long ago, but like recently I started doing the logic game videos where as I go through the rules, if there is an acceptable situation question as the first question, what I do is I'll translate rule number one, and then instead of going to rule number two and translating it and building on my game board like I used to do, what I do is I then immediately go to the first question to eliminate an answer choice, and then I go to rule number two, translate the rule, see how the rule plays with rule number one, see how it plays on the game board, and then return to the acceptable situation question, and then try to eliminate another answer choice. Is that something you do or not? Not really.
No, yeah, I do that. Just I always do the game board first. It's just what I was taught. But I go rule by rule just like that. And the first question on the LSAT or any logic game, you're going to do that. I don't know of. I've never heard of someone doing it a different way where you don't go question or rule by rule to eliminate.
Oh, what I mean is instead of on the one hand you have let's set up the game board and figure out the rules first, and then we'll go to the first question and then take each rule to eliminate. Alternatively, you're doing the first question simultaneous with the game board setup.
Yeah, I did not do that. I would do the game board first.
Yeah, that's what I used to do. I mean, out of all the hundreds of logic games, I think like 80-90% of them I did it that way. But recently, for the newer ones, I found that it's actually much better to do it the way I had just described, where simultaneous with the game board setup.
I could see that saving time.
Also, it helps you a lot to reinforce what the rules are, because you're just getting like two or three looks at the rules in quick succession, and yeah, I find it to
That
be
makes a
very
lot of
helpful.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually, I might try a few games like that myself because
Oh,
and
are you still
that's another,
gonna?
yes, I still do LSAT. I have a problem. I do. I'm on 7 stage far too often, and I'm I like
No,
answering.
we welcome it. You're not on 7 Stage enough. I saw you didn't win the gold award for the
um,
channels. That's something you need to aspire to next month.
I never win that. That's Alex's. He's a pro. I can't keep up with him.
Yeah.
And his advice every time I want to say something, his advice is already 10 feet ahead of me, and I can't keep up with that guy. Yeah. That's and another thing. And this is actually something I wanted to say is when I saw on 7 Sage someone asking for a specific question, those were my favorite posts when I was studying because I would go to the question and try and see if I could explain it to someone else. And my whole life, since the Marine Corps, if you can't teach something to someone, you don't understand it.
I totally
Um,
agree. Is that the official Marine Corps motto?
no, 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 no. It's just something I learned through it. But I mean, it helped me a ton. And I would learn like I think I know this question, and then I would go to explain it, and I couldn't explain it. I could not sit there and say this is why this question works. I just think this is the right answer, or maybe I looked at the answer before I I was ready to explain it, and I still couldn't explain it. That's when I knew I needed it. So 7Sage, the community, the forums, those questions helped me a ton to spot weaknesses, and they were my favorite. I look for them every day.
That's great. Yeah, I echo that 100%. For those of you guys here who are still studying, take every opportunity you can to play the role of teacher, right? No matter how well you're doing better than some, you're doing worse than others. So for the people you're doing better than, you should teach them. You know, that puts you in a position where it's just like a test, to see if you really understand. If you really do, you should be able to explain it. If you can't explain it, it means that you don't really understand. And then for people who are doing better than you, of course, you should play the role of student and ask them for help. Okay, great. Oh yeah, one other thing that I started doing for logic games is I started changing up the order in which I approached the questions. And again, this was not something that I felt like I had to do because I don't know, logic games were like on my actual PT years and or PT on my actual LSAT. I finished the games with a few minutes to spare, and I got -0 on that section. So it never like occurred to me to like think hard of additional ways to optimize on the games. But recently, I've started doing the questions that give you additional premises first, because I find that those questions tend to be easier because they further restrict the number of worlds, right? Like question 3 will say, if M is in 4, then which one of the following must be true? That's easier than just a straight up must be. Generally speaking, it's easier than just a straight up must be true question. So is that something you do too, or not really?
I'm pretty stubborn, and I think Josh or the other sages have tried to break me. I'm stubborn. I go question by question. I can't
You
even in
just like in
LR.
order, right? Yeah,
Yes, skipping destroys the way my brain works. It bothers me.
yeah,
But saying that, those are my favorite types of questions because they are so easy. When you restrict, the more restricted you can make a board, the better.
yeah.
So those are the questions I hate the most. Are which of the following can go on Monday? Those destroy me because
Yeah,
I'm such a brute force, and that
yeah.
one you can't brute force that. That you need to have the inferences and see why one those slow me down.
Yeah. You know what I haven't seen this in a while, but this is like the death knell for like the brute force strategy, which is a question where every answer choice gives you a separate antecedent condition. So like A will say something like, if like the question would just be like which one following must be true, right? And then A will say something like, if M is on Monday, then J is on Tuesday. If and then B will say something like, if K is on Friday, then N is on Thursday. And it's just like, holy shit. So it's basically 5 questions, right? It's snuck, like sort of compacted into one. So that's the kind of stuff that like, if you're brute forcing as your strategy, I would highly recommend just like see if, the right answer pops out. If it doesn't, move on. It's just a huge time sink.
Yeah, those I have ran into those before, and those
Yeah.
do.
Now that I mentioned this, I honestly haven't. I don't remember when the last game was that I saw a question like that. It must have been
None of
a
the
long
recent
time
tests.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, not on the recent test.
because I went -0 on September's
Hmm.
and -1 on December's, and the one was the substitution.
Right,
Uh,
substitution
and
equivalence.
I'm
Yeah,
50-50 on those. Those are either I understand it or I don't, and it's
I totally agree. Those questions same for me. If I see it, like either the answer just kind of just jumps out. It's like there's like a halo around it. I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Or alternatively, like I don't know. I'm very hesitant to actually try to brute force those because they just take too much time. But okay, so you studied, you took a course in the summer, you took the test and you got a 157 and you didn't do so well in algae, and then you found 7 Sage, you started, and then what happened?
So I took 7 Sage. I started in around November of 2016, and I went all the way until September 2017 was going to be my next test. Um, I didn't study too hard for a few months because I was starting a new job and it was hard full-time work. So in May, I would say is when I really hunkered down to study again, and that was every day, multiple hours a day. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. before work.
This is all while you were working?
Yes. Well, so I had after school, I had a few months off where I didn't work. I was lucky to land a really good job I'm still at. But it's the bulk of my studying for LR and reading comp came while I was full-time working. And that's 40 hours a week with an hour commute on each end. So it was a pretty
Wow.
tiring time.
That you're one of the few people who actually take the advice I tell everybody, which is to treat the LSAT as your real job, and like wake up in the morning and devote your best hours to the LSAT. That's amazing that you were able to consistently wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I did that for about a month.
Okay.
And then I started dying. And then it became, my job is very, I'm lucky. My job it's a 40-hour week job, but there's times where it's so slow that I can just do LSAT. Then there's times I can't breathe. So it's trade-off, but I did get lucky with the job I have. But I also started finding unique times. My train was a commute. My commute is on a train. So I would do logic games on the train. I would do during my lunch, that was like an LR review time, or when I would get home, if I had any extra energy, it would go into. I want to say I was obsessed. The LSAT became an obsession for me.
Yeah.
If I wasn't at work or actively doing something, it was LSAT, and I dreamt LSAT. It was almost unhealthy, I would say. Don't go too far with this. Be a human being. Treat yourself right. But yes, I did obsess over this test until September, and then September I choked. So
What did you get in September?
163, and I was PTing around 170 at that time.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to the sages again, or Alex, or anyone that was telling me that I was burning myself out and that I needed to relax and not work myself up. And these guys don't know what they're talking about. They're insane. And well, I should have listened to them, because I did burn myself out pretty hard before that test.
So Daniel and Josh, if you guys are here, you can say whatever you want. You can say I told you so. If that's what you want to say.
Especially Josh. Josh definitely warned me. Yeah.
What was the breakdown? How did you end up getting that 163?
So I went -0 in logic games. I think I only went -5 in reading comp, maybe. And that was the judicial candor, judge candor, whatever, that everyone freaked out about. But I actually went -13 in LR, in one
Yikes.
LR alone. Yeah. And that was a wake-up call in one LR. The other one I did okay.
What was the other one?
4 or 5. Yeah, low. But one LR, the first LR, it destroyed me. I don't know
Yikes.
why either. Looking back at it, after I printed it out, after I had a break, I don't know how I missed the questions I missed.
Hmm.
It was shocking. And it was because I was worked up and I didn't stick to anything that I had studied. I didn't listen to other people. I got in my own mind. I put everything on the test. I told myself that I wasn't going to get into any schools, and so don't do that.
Mm.
Go
Mm.
in calm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
And then, so after that test, from October until December, I hung out on 7Sage. I only did 4 PTs. I didn't really study at all. I barely touched it, and my attitude became more of it's just another practice test, and I've seen this so many times before that it can't trick me. It can't trip me up. If I've seen it if I've taken 40 practice tests, there's no way this test can trip me up. I've seen it before. And that
Yeah.
was the mindset I went into December, and it
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like it's, I'm sure people here are not hearing that for the first time. Like you say it, I say it, everyone says it. It's just how you have to approach it, right? But it's
Yeah.
so hard to actually do. Like how, I mean,
Hmm.
let's in your case, I'm sure you knew that back in September as well, right?
Yeah, I did.
But what do you, I don't know. I guess I'm asking you to like introspect a little. And what do you suppose was the difference and how you were able to shift your mindset so that you were in a better place for the December?
So, and then I see that MQEW said something. I'll address that as well. My 170s were the reason I got to the 170s. That happened. That studying happened between May and September. I was already there and ready to score 170. It was mindset that got me down. And what happened is I started not obsessing over the test. I brought video games back in. I had cut them out almost completely, and I started playing video games, which is a huge stress release to me. I started being healthier. I took 4 PTs between September and September. I took over 40 total in my entire year and a half of studying. But the way I got the mindset was just to start letting myself relax once in a while, and not when I was watching movies, I wouldn't think about the LSAT while I was watching them. I would actually enjoy the movie. Surprisingly, that's a way to relax. I would let go of difficult problems. If there was a difficult problem, I would find out the answer. I would find out how the answer was right, but I would let go of it. I wouldn't get mad at it. The test didn't become, I didn't get angry at the test anymore. I became more amicable, I guess, but it became more of a hobby. It became a hobby. It went from this enemy standing in my way that I couldn't beat, and it was just defeating my life, to it. This is a hobby now, and it still is, and that's why I still study it. It's became a hobby. I study the LSAT even now. I like answering questions for it.
Right, right. So it sounds like it sounds like actually, sorry, just to address the point that the MQEW asked. Yeah, it on the surface it looks like he went from a 163 to 171 in 3 months by playing video games and taking 4 prep tests.
Yes, it
Yes.
does.
But
Um,
that is not the takeaway here.
no, so
Because
it was a year and a
he
half.
right, yeah, because Glenn had already been prep testing. Even when he got the 163 in September, he had been prep testing at what would you say, what, 170 plus?
No, 160, not 170. Pretty
Yeah,
much hitting
around
that
around
mark every time.
170, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was the reason the 163 was depressed because it was and there's him talking about the his mindset.
Basically, what it is the studying for this test always, it's current. So for those of you that are taking it in a week, I think you're right. February's in a week. The studying you've done up until this point is what's going to shine through on that test. Everything you do this week may keep you refreshed. It may keep you in the right mindset, but it's not going to teach you anything new. This week is your week to relax and to calm yourself before the test, because you put the work in already. And mine was a little bit of a dramatic 3 month relaxing period, and you have a week now. So just get your mind state in control. This is just another test. You've seen it. You know what this test is going to be. Everyone is capable of scoring. If I can get to a 171, I promise you, with the right amount of time dedication, every single person in here could score a 171. This test isn't some test that some people are just really good at. It takes work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some people are just really good at it. That's
That's true
definitely
too.
true.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But for most people, it's just a lot of hard work and
Yeah.
dedication.
And if you look at Josh's story too,
Yeah,
same.
you guys are like, yeah, very 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 similar there. Um, a long journey to break the 170.
Yep.
I do remember what I was gonna say. It's kind of paradoxical. Like we all know how important this test is, which is why we put in the work and the dedication that we do. But that knowledge, I think, actively works against having the proper mindset. It's like when you were able to switch your mindset over from this is so important, this is the enemy I need to take down, and I've been failing. When you switch from that mindset over to, it's just a hobby, I do it because it's fun. like that allows you to relax. We say stay calm. Well, that mindset allows you to stay calm. So it's kind of paradoxical. It's you have to do like a Jedi mind trick on yourself. Like I always tell people, like, if it would be great if you just, like, it doesn't matter. Can you convince yourself that it doesn't matter? Like, if you can, then that'll really help. You're not just gonna, like, oh, I'll just bubble in C for everything because it doesn't matter. No, like, all of your training up to this point will still kick in. You'll still just operate, but you just won't be like hyper stressed out and freaking out about it. You'll just actually be able to operate at your optimal, normal optimal level, right? So I don't know how to. Do you have? I mean, I try to think of ways to get people to believe that, like, it really doesn't matter. And by the way, this has been shown in empirical economic studies where when you incentivize people a little bit to do a task, they do better. But if the incentives grow too large, people start freezing up and can't. And this is especially true when it's cognitively demanding tasks. The more cognitively demanding, the higher reward. There's some like inflection point beyond which the performance drops when the reward is high, when it is too high. So the LSAT is like this sort of like the like the paradigmatic case of that, where the rewards are so huge. So do you have any, I don't know, Jedi mind trick style techniques? Like you mentioned some already, I think, like just playing video games and like watching movies, allowing your life to.
That's a hard question to answer. There's nothing really. I just let go of the test, and it became a thing where it was, I know what I'm doing. I've done it. So let me enjoy my life again. Let let the test kind of slide away. And this is true for a lot of reasons. And the test was even more pressure for me, because when I was asking people, and this is true for a lot of people, but when I was asking people, I want to go to top 14, and this is my GPA, they're 170 or bust, you're screwed. So that this score became, I needed a 171. If I wanted to go to any of the schools I dreamed about going to, because my GPA was so crippled, so that put more pressure on this test, because I didn't have a GPA to kind of weigh it out. And it works the other way, obviously, if your GPA is really high, but you can't get the LSATs for. So this test is almost disproportionately weighed. I mean, the GPA takes you 4 years to accumulate, as to the test, it takes, who knows. But I think taking that out, I didn't think of it as I need a 171 to get any schools anymore. I just took it out and said, I just want to do the best I can on this test. I've seen what I can do. I know what I'm capable of doing, and I want to replicate it. So that was a mind trick that I took that extra little lever of, I have to do this or my entire life falls apart. Because it won't. Your life will never, even when I've hit rock bottom in life, your life will never be that bad. You have the power to change it. Let me just say it that way. So you have the power to grab hold of what you want in life and change it. It's just a matter of doing it. It may not, that sounds easy when I say it. It's incredibly difficult to do. But mindset like that, I don't know if I'm trying to be as positive as I can on 7Sage, especially encourage everyone. And I sometimes I'll say things like, I don't know, maybe I'm softballing people and saying that, oh, everyone can do it, and when I should be giving them a little bit more reality checks. But I think sometimes just having that motivation and the mindset of knowing yourself and being capable is enough. And those are little mind tricks, the Sith mind tricks, by the way, not Jedi. that I would use. Stop taking the pressure and putting it in places where it's out of your control. I couldn't control if I was going to get into the T14. It didn't matter at that point. It just mattered if I was able to take all the hard work I put into the test and replicate it. Nothing more than that.
It's very good. It's very good. You guys have been typing comments, and just keep doing that. I will be pulling from the questions that you guys ask. So here's one from CW. So CW says, just a thought, would you rather have a 171 LSAT score or a much higher GPA as you were studying? Let's just say the equivalent GPA would be like a 3.8, 3.9.
That would be amazing. But the GPA is something I didn't have control over, right? So that goes to what I was just saying. I messed up. I own up to my mistake, obviously. I did the best I can to pull myself out of that little hole. But it's going to be true for anybody. So if you ask the same question to someone who has a high GPA and a low LSAT, they're going to say, I'd rather have the LSAT higher. because that's what's crippling them. So I'm going to say I want my GPA higher because that's what I feel is crippling me. Perfect world, I want a 180 and a 4.0. That would be the dream, but it's just something I don't have. So I have to work with what I've got. And through the admissions process, some schools, it depends on the schools. So I didn't even bother applying to Berkeley. Berkeley just, they don't care about your LSAT. They want GPA. And it's, I type my numbers into my LSN and to the LSAC one and to everything. And they just, Berkeley was not going to take me. They do not like splitters like I am. So I saved the money for them. And which is funny because I live 10 minutes from Berkeley. But it depends where you want to go. And there's certain things you just can't control. And you can make fun of me all you want. My GPA is due to World of Warcraft. I dropped out of college because of World of Warcraft. I didn't go to class. I didn't withdraw. I just took the Fs. I took the hit to the GPA. I was 18 and I didn't care. I didn't think this was going to affect me when I was 28 trying to apply to law school. And here I am, limping my way into hopefully a T14 school.
Well, how old are you, Glenn?
I'm 28.
Okay, so I'm 4 years older than you. World of Warcraft at 18. I don't think that was a thing when I was 18 yet. Thank God. Thank freaking God. You know what I was doing at 18? It was all about Diablo 2 when I was 18. So when you were 14, yeah, wow.
Before I had games before I've been a gamer my whole life, and they both helped me to keep calm, but they have hurt me, and I will admit that it's almost to the point of being like an addiction.
It is a love-hate relationship for sure. But yeah, because I think that's not unintentional. I mean, those game designers know exactly what psychological levers to pull to get players hooked, right? But they are so much fun. Well, now you can play all you want to get fully addicted, so that when law school starts.
That's the plan. I'm trying to get as much game in right now as I can. But we'll see what happens here, because I want to panic apply to more schools. I've been thinking about it still. We'll see. This is not the fun part, guys. Start your personal statement early. Start writing now. It's kind of, I miss the LSAT. It was like a safety blanket towards the end, and that goes back to being a hobby. I was used to it. I knew it. It was predictable. I knew what I was doing. I knew what to focus on. And when you go to write the personal statement, it's like, what the hell do I write?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we have a question from Jake Rat. Glenn, what do you think are some significant differences in how you think/analyze LR problems compared to before 7Sage?
Oh, wow, they're huge. 7Sage was eye-opening for me, especially I didn't even know what negation techniques were. They did talk about the contrapositive in the class I took, but they never really showed me where in the test that mattered. It was like, here, you need to know this, but okay, now what? What is there a certain type of question? And then they, instead of naming the questions, numbers them. So there's like type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to like 15, 16. To translate from a number to a question name to a type, it was like an extra step that they added. So LR, I was really not strong. And it was gut. I would go in gut instinct, and that's great if you want to be tricked and get the wrong answer. But with 7Sage, I was able, because the way it was broken down in the core curriculum, to each question type built on each other. Once I understood a sufficient assumption question, that made necessary assumption questions a little bit easier. And it goes the other way. Once I started to understand necessary assumption, sufficient assumption became a little bit easier. And I still couldn't, sufficient and necessary, even now, trip me up. My head does not like to wrap around those two things. But once I saw how they work within a question, it became easier for me to understand. Explaining it on the outside is really hard for me to do. They also rely really heavily on mapping out questions. And even when I did the 7Sage course, I don't map questions out very much. I get more confused because the way JY explained it, obviously you take it, put it in a little package, right? So you take a whole sentence and that becomes 3 letters or whatever, just X. But that's a step that maybe I'm just not intelligent enough to do. My mind would lose what that step was, and it would just become an X, arrow X to me on the page. So I stopped mapping as much, and I started I started looking at the way JY, what he was looking for in the question. So like a sufficient assumption, he's looking for that gap. And there's always that gap. It makes a jump somewhere in there. There's a nothing's connected. And in that sense, it's like a logic game, right? Because there's an inference in there that I need to plug in to make this question work. In order to make this valid, I have to plug this in. So JY really helped with his explanations and the videos and the CC, helped me get an understanding of each question type. And from there, it just came down to practice.
CW says this will be my first time to test. How much of a handicap is just the unfamiliarity of actual test day conditions? It's a good question.
That is. And this goes back to your mindset. Unfortunately, I think unless you're really good at meditation and keeping yourself calm, you might be a little bit nervous compared to someone who's tested 3 times. One big thing, and they 7Sager is really good about putting motivational posts up and giving you experience. I didn't realize that you don't just sit down and take the test. There's almost an hour and a half gap time before you're in the room, before you even start the test. You have to fill in the bubbles. People don't know how to fill out their own name. It's a standardized test, so people are asking questions that you're like, what are you talking about? To put your name on the sheet. And then that eats up time, and it depends on your test center too. So I got really lucky. My test center is really quiet. It's in a hotel underground. But there's 70 to 80 people. Some people have 15 people taking the test at their test center. So it depends on the test centers too. Don't let it shake you. Don't talk to other test takers. I would just keep to myself. A lot of those test takers are going in for the first time and they don't have 7Sage and they didn't study. They just think they can wing it. And they're going to tell you how nervous they are, or they're going to tell you how they have I'm going to score 178 on my first try because I read this book by this guy, and they're just going to get you more nervous. So just relax. That would be the only thing I can really say. And I think it'll be okay. I think if you're able to keep your mind calm, the first test shouldn't be a big deal. You just need to talk to people who've taken it, even post on 7Sage. People will be more willing to give you their experiences. If there's a hiccup during your first test that you weren't expecting, you really have to go to the bathroom, or don't panic. Don't let that snowball into something else. And this may be a little bit due to military training for me, but when something big happens like that and you feel like it's the end of your life, it's not. Just move past that. Do not let that become something that, okay, I had a hard section 1. Don't let it affect section 2, 3, 4, and 5. That carryover is what's going to kill you. You need to just be able to breathe, realize that, okay, this is lost for whatever reason, this question or this section, and then move on. That would be one of my tips for you.
Yeah. There's a reset at the end of every section. You just gotta you contain the damage, or whether it's the damage that's been done or it's the points that you've won, whatever it is, it resets the next section. Right, so you start over again.
Yep, and that's a good mindset to have. Don't let it keep snowballing, because that's gonna hurt your whole test.
Yeah, you cannot become fixated on the mistake, because this is something that, like, I think mindfulness meditation teaches very well. Is like to recognize negative thoughts as what they are. Is just the thought arising in the present moment, right? When you become fixated on, like, that inference that you failed to make for that game, that's done already. It's over. You've already bubbled in whatever answer, or didn't bubble in whatever answer. At this moment, you're in a new section now, and this, like, negative thought is just that. It's just a thought arising in your mind in the present moment. It has no bearing to reality other than whatever negative effects it might have on your performance of this section. So if you can just, like, recognize that it's just a thought, right? I think that's the first step to letting it go. Yeah, that's very good. Okay, so something else I want to add. I just found out from a student who took the December test, that she had her watch taken away by a proctor who didn't know what they were doing. They were over enforcing the rule. LSAT changed up the rules about how you now you don't get the timers, which is okay, whatever. That's how they decided. But then like, that depends on the proctors knowing like how to tell the timers from normal watches, right? If they can be under inclusive or they can be over inclusive, and here in this instance they were unfortunately over inclusive. The Casio watch with a bezel, the like $13 watch that I recommend everyone getting.
I have that watch. Yes, I do.
Right. So that's the watch that the proctor said, okay, that's a timer, not a watch. I'm taking that away from you. Right. So yeah, that's just unfortunate if that happens. But I was thinking like you probably should just bring a backup watch just in case. Like one of those like $5 Casio watches that don't have anything on them. Just the watch face and the moving hands. That way, even if your proctor decides to take away something that is completely legal, because I mean, like you're not going to argue with them at that point. It's just that's not the right approach. You just give them watch and then you have your backup watch. Um, okay, so again, like real life test day conditions. Lots of weird shit could happen. Okay, so Paul, are you here? Is your mic working?
Am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I was just wondering. Normally, right now with my practice, I do for the most part fine. I'm probably scoring in kind of around the 165 to 168, and I'd really like to break the 170. But occasionally, I'll just have a drilling session or a PT where I will. What it'll be? It'll be probably about, I don't know, say -10 on LR, and it'll just be completely out of the blue. And my like initial response is almost like a gambling addict, and I'll start doing tons of LR drilling until I feel like I'm back up to where I'd like to be. But in there, I'm getting super stressed, and then it's just sort of a downhill spiral. So, any tips?
That's burnout, my friend, and burnout is sneaky. It caught up to me without even I didn't even know I was there. I figured, no, I can burn through this, no problem. But if I mean think about it, my second attempt in September, I got a 163, which was 7 points lower than I had been PTing, and even on practice test. So originally, I had your same mindset. I would be scoring at the 169, and sometimes I would get a test where I'd hit 160, 159, and it was what? And I would push harder at that point. That's the point where I think it's time to step back and to say, okay, maybe I do need a break. Maybe I put way too much time into the LSAT right now, and my mind is just burnt. I can't. And a lot of times, what people understand with burnout, it's not just the test. It's not this enclosed thing where only the test can burn you out. Your whole life comes into account when it comes to burnout. If work was extra stressful, if your dog was sick, if any little thing contributes to burnout. So if you have too much of that going on, and then the LSAT on top of it, you're going to feel this lull in your practice. And the wrong mindset, in which everyone does, is to get frustrated at the test and then attack it again. That's the time to take the break. That's the time when you need to say, okay, I need a day to breathe. Sometimes it takes weeks for people to recover from burnout, and sometimes it takes a day. But if you look at your one outlier test, does not determine anything, obviously. So if you're not hitting that 150 range or whatever drop consistently, I would say it was just a bad section. Review it, see what went wrong, but don't let it become a defining thing where you think this test makes you think that it defines you, who you are as a person. It gets in your skin. I can't describe something else I've ever felt that's like this test that made me feel so dumb all the time. That made me feel like I was inadequate, that made me feel like I couldn't do it. It just, reach out to people, 7Sage, family, friends, maybe not them, they won't understand. But I guarantee you, we've all been where you are, and we've all had that bad test. And instead of getting mad, you need to step back. And I think, yeah, Josh even said it. You want to be pushing as smart as you can, not harder. Just look at it as a way to take a break, type of thing, or focus on a new section. Even if you don't want to step away from the LSAT and LR is the one thing that's hitting you, go to reading comp for a while. Let the ideas and things that are happening in LR settle in your brain, and go to reading comp. And sometimes you'll do reading comp and come back to LR strong. This test is it's a weird test, but you learn in weird ways. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, often the right prescription is just take a break. That's actually because it's counterintuitive that that's what you should be doing. But you need to rest as well. Something else you might want to consider to combat the gambler's addict's mindset is to focus not on the results, but rather focus on the process, right? Because the results are a function of the process. But it's not solely a function of the process. The results are a function of the process plus luck. And luck is the part that you can't control. So if you're focusing on the results, you're kind of letting luck dictate your mood and dictate your strategies. And that's not good. Luck swings. Rather, I always say, like, you should try to focus on what the process is, right? If there are some things you can fix in your process. So this advice goes well with taping yourself and watching the footage of you actually moving through an LR section. Where are you getting caught in time sinks? And then after watching the tape, you do the timing sheet, which I don't know if you've seen them yet, but in the way later PTs, like in the late 70s and 80s, I started putting up my own timing sheets as sort of a model for you guys to copy. Like you can take that and just empty out the cells and then do it yourself. That review where you're watching footage of yourself doing the test allows you to focus and sort of tweak and hone in on the right process. Like I'll berate myself if I see on round one I'm spending like 200 seconds on a question. That's just insane. Like it doesn't even matter what question that is. You don't spend 200 seconds on it, because what is that? That's 3.5 minutes, right? 3 minutes and 20 seconds. That's like 8% of the section time on one question. Like it's just not worth it. Even if you get it right, you've lost. Yeah. So that might be something else to think about. Just process driven. Great. Thanks, Paul. Let's see. Jeremiah, are you here?
I'm here.
You have a question for Glenn?
This is my third time taking the LSAT under actual testing conditions, and I was wondering if I should take it at the same center because I'm an international student, and every time I take it, I have to fly in. So I was wondering, should I take it at the same center, or does it not matter?
If you can, I would take it at the same test center, even if it wasn't ideal. If this is your third time doing it, you know what to expect. I took it at the same test center all 3 times, but I was fortunate enough not to have to fly in. That's dedication. That's real dedication. I would, even if it wasn't ideal, the 2 times you took it there, even if the proctors were bad or the desks were too small or something like that, you know that test center, and it won't change as often as you think. 2 of my tests were a year apart, and when I took it at the same test center again, I had the same proctor, the same setup, everything was the same. So it gave me that sense of comfort. I knew how it was going to work. I knew the proctor was going to mess up reading certain parts of the instructions to us. I knew where I was going to wait. I knew the comfort. It gives you comfort, and that's something that's a valuable thing for someone who's taking it more than once. I don't know if hopefully you're going to get there. You're not going to fly in like the morning of the test. You get time to maybe stay in a hotel and sleep. And that goes for a lot of people. Even if
the day before.
Okay, good. And then even if you're not flying to your test, this may go to more people. You might want to think about, if your test center is a few miles away or pretty far away, maybe getting a hotel room near your test center. You don't want to be driving. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in the Bay Area and we have a lot of bad drivers here. It's stressful. And having that morning in traffic and being stressed before your test, try and get rid of that kind of stuff if you can, even if it costs a few extra bucks. But for your instance, I would take it in the same test center if that was at all possible.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeremiah. So Jackrod has another question. This is a fun one. All-time favorite LR questions, games, or passages, and what sticks out to you about those?
Um, my favorite were the hardest because that showed me where I was weak. I can't remember this test, but it was in the early tests and it had to do with numbers. I hate math and math really trips me up. And this one was especially tricky. It had, I wish I could find it. It had something to do with rolling numbers and it was an LR question and you mapped it out like it was a logic game. It was that type of question. That one really got me. My favorite logic game was the round one in one of the early KM. I even remember the letters, guys. I have a problem. It's KM, P, O, and N, and they're in a circle, and who can sit next to each other. That was probably one of my all-time favorite games. I figured why that one was my favorite is I figured it out without watching a video on it. I made the circle myself, and I was able to do it, and I felt cool because I was like, oh, I did this on my own, and then it turned out it wasn't that difficult of a question once you've got it in a circle. Reading comp, I actually really like the December one, and this is something that I struggled with reading comp to ever get it low. I mean, even on my actual test, I think I missed 4 or 5, maybe a little less. But the passages were fun, and I was interested in the passages I read for the December test. They were things that I enjoyed. Unlike the September 2016 test with the liqueur, I don't even know what the hell liqueur is. I still don't know. I hate Ellen Gray. I hate her with passion. I've never been so disinterested in reading a passage in my entire life.
It's pronounced lacquer.
Whatever. What the heck are you doing to the wood? Why do I care about it? So that one got under my skin. But that's actually a good point. If you can keep yourself interested in the test, even the little LR passages, I got pretty involved with them. I said, no, Mr. Mayor, you can't be doing that. That's not right. That's because of this kind of flaw. Or I would get on the December test, there was a question about dolphins and where they could live and why can you live in 5 feet of water and what's your problem? And I got really into the questions.
That really helps, especially for passages. I started putting up like extracurricular videos on some of the core curriculum RC passages just to kind of like expand your knowledge base, right? I find that to be helpful. Like if you're reviewing and like a particular RC passage is particularly difficult for you, it's probably because you have no peripheral knowledge. Not always, but it might be because you have no peripheral knowledge within which to contextualize the passage, right? And that becomes incredibly difficult.
It does, and I agree with that. And if I'm reading something and I know what they're talking about, it's easier to engage than if you're talking about putting some clear thing on wood. Whatever. That one really gets under my skin.
Yeah. So I think depending on like where you're coming from, like art is hard for some people, science is hard for some people, law is hard for some people. Like just do YouTubing on the thing, right? On the thing that they're talking about, and you just learn more about it. Next time you encounter it, it is the same subjects, or if not the same subjects, like related subjects that repeat.
Yep. And then actually, there's 2 tips that I just thought of. One relates back to a question we had a bit ago. Score doesn't matter, guys. Get that out of your head. When you're practicing, do not let the score define your studying. I was the worst at that. This test, even if you feel like you're not moving and you're not improving, you are. And it's by looking at your score, and if you're hitting the 165, 165, 165, 160, and you feel like you're not moving, that's the best way to discourage yourself. And I did that. I did that really hard. Don't do that. Score. Questions matter. Individuals' questions matter. Those are your victories. Those are what add up to create your 170s, your 160s, your 150s. That's what adds up. It's not your cumulative score every time you take a PT. And then the other thing is there's a lot of rumors around the LSAT, and there's a lot of these like, man, I got myself worked up over things, and I would go on Reddit and I would go on TLS and Ghost and read stuff there, and people are talking about stuff, and these people, a lot of times there's great information, and they have all this insight about the test, and which is awesome. a lot of the times they're just a test taker like you, and they're starting some, oh, the adcoms read Reddit and they're reading you right now and they're going to judge your whole application about what you post, and you get caught up in that. I had a freak out after the September test because on 7Sage I commented about Q and some other letter on the test, and I was like, oh my God, I messaged everybody. I messaged Josh, I messaged Daniel, I was like, please remove this. Dylan, please take us all down. I thought LSAC was sitting there reading every post. It's not like that, guys. Don't get caught up in the rumors of this test. It's like a cult. But they're just people like you taking the test, and one person can say something and scare an entire room of people. You know what I mean? Don't do that to yourself. I did it, and I think that hurt my mindset in the September test a lot too.
Yeah.
So those two pieces of advice that popped into my head.
Yeah. Well, related to the improvement is this next question from ASDF, who says, was your improvement in LR section a slow process, or did you jump from like a -8-ish per section to a -3 all of a sudden after something clicked?
That, when you first exposed to something with any section, you're going to make it probably a decent jump. Logic games, reading comp, or LR, you'll probably go from 8 to 4. That's because you started understanding the core concept. It's now refining it, and the refining is when you stop making the jump. So for instance, with logic games, before I took any studying on it, I went like -10. And then it clicked and I was down to -4 or 5. And then it just took refining to get it down to 0 from there. Same with LR. As I learned each question type, I became more and more and more exposed to their tricks. My flaw was my hardest for me. I needed exposure to flaw in order to get better, and I would just miss flaw question after flaw question. And it wasn't until I started asking myself each question, does the stimulus do this? Was I able to get it? I took their stupid English with their convoluted argument presumes what it sets out to, blah, blah, blah. And I just I would translate it into stupid, dumb English. I'd say it's circular reasoning. Does it use the premise and then use it in the conclusion again? That I would make it as dumb as I could because I'm not smart enough to understand their big words or what the hell they're saying. That took most of my time, and that's when I was at -8, and then I would maybe go -7 on one section, 6, and back up to 8, and then 7, and then that's when the whittle down, and that was slow. There wasn't a click for that kind of stuff. That was just a long, drawn-out process of blind review, working on questions, learning their tricks, learning what they're going to throw at me. And again, even on the September test, it had a fairly lenient curve, but I missed a ton of necessary assumption questions on that test. That was just my weakness for that test. So I went back to working on those, even though I'm not going to retest.
How many questions how many LR questions did you end up missing in September? Or sorry, December.
December was 6 total.
6 total.
3 per section.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. Nice. And then 4 on reading comp, 1 on logic games.
Logic games, right.
Yeah.
So I think there is, like, when people talk about like the click, I suppose like at some point towards the middle of your studies, there has to be this click when you look at a new LR question and you're like, oh, deja vu, or oh, I totally recognize this question. It's not new. It's just an old question, right? That could be that. I mean, in my mind, that's what I think of when I think of like something clicking. It's very similar to the process where you look at an logic game and you're like, oh, this is not a new logic game. I've seen this before. Not really, you haven't seen it before, but you know, it just looks so similar to previous logic games that you've seen before. Like cookie cutter, you know, like like being able to recognize these cookie cutter logical reasoning questions. Like this one is just they just presented you with a correlation and then they conclude a causation, and then you kind of know the space within which the answer choices are going to play around. So that click, I'm sure that click happened for you, right?
Yes, for sure. And that's kind of what I mean when I said that there were huge jumps as a core concept took root. But it was, guys, 170 and 169 is like 1 point, right? So luck plays a factor, especially once you get into the higher areas of the test, higher score ranges. And it's not uncommon for someone with a 169, 170 to go all the way down to a 165 even. That's not that big of a move question-wise. It's a huge score jump, but question-wise, that's 4 or 5 questions, and you might have just had a bad day or a hard section. So don't let those affect you either. If you're having a swing like that, it might just be an oddball. I went -0 on reading comp 1 test. I think it was PT 80. I don't know, a random test, and I've never gone -0. And that was an easy section for me that day. Normally I'm averaging 3 or 4 on reading comp. So each test does have a bit of luck, like you said, and variability as well.
Great. Well, let's switch gears real quick, and I want to talk a little bit about your current job and what you do. I'm sure the audience here will find that interesting as well. So tell us a bit about what your current job is.
So I currently work at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco. I'm what they call an administrative assistant. It's kind of like a floater. I do literally everything. There are days when I do deputy work with the judges. So I'm the guy sitting there slamming the gavel around, just saying all rise. And then I worked at like a judicial conference, which is cool. I can't talk about the judges, guys. I see the question there. Sorry about that. I can't say anything. You read everything you need to read about all our judges. Yeah, and it's actually, they're the ones that encouraged me to apply to Yale too. And that's clerks that went to Yale that have told me to do it. So I think you guys need to, don't cut yourself short. Even with my crippled GPA, I have a story that I can tell these adcoms, and if I can get it across to them, they may take me. And in a lot of sense, numbers define you, yes, but they don't at the same time. And I guarantee each one of you guys has a unique story like that you can tell. So don't limit yourself. And that's something that I've learned at this job. The judges have even told me the legal career is a lot more open than a lot of people give it credit for. And the judges I've never met a group of people that are that intelligent. It blows my mind, and I'm lucky every day that I get to hear them talk. I don't understand. I mean, I'm going to law school, and they'll say things that I don't understand. Half of it is because it's an appellate court, so there's years of case law and case development that I've never seen. But they understand things, and they're pretty solid.
Yeah, what is what's like the most intellectually challenging work that you do?
Not too much. I do a lot of docket stuff, which is sitting at a computer and typing in numbers, and then that's not really intellectual stimulating at all. What happens is when a judge or someone asks you a question, and we have the way the Ninth Circuit works, and we're a little bit unique from other circuits. We have staff attorneys within the office who the cases come in, they rate the cases on this scale, and they present the cases to the judges, and not everything will go to oral argument, and sometimes they'll say this case is just good enough to submit it on the brief type stuff. And listening to that and trying to think through that, and I'm not really a part of it, but I get to kind of think of it on the side and listen to the staff attorneys. They really struggle. Some of these things there is no answer to. And watching these two cases come together and this legal problem develop, and then you're sitting there like, oh my God, what do you do with this? You can't do anything. And that's the one that obviously goes to the judges, because the staff attorneys can't figure out what to do with that kind of case. But a lot of the intellectual stuff is when you get to sit and listen to the cases themselves be presented to you. Yeah. My favorite case ever, we had and you probably read about it, we had a chimpanzee, I think it was, take a picture of itself. And PETA sued, saying that it's intellectual property. The photographer didn't get the credit for the picture and the money. The monkey should be getting all the money. And I think the monkey ended up winning that case. I think the photographer still got the money, but you get cases like that. And those are fun to think about, right? Because does the monkey he took the picture, so does he get the money? Who gets the money? And then some of them, you see a lot of depressing stuff. And I don't want to talk anyone out of certain types of law, but I was also a clerk for a judge at San Francisco Superior Court, and I did family law. I've never seen something that depressing in my entire life. It takes a special kind of person, I think, to do that, especially with the kids involved. And so there's a lot going on, guys. Law is huge. I mean, it touches everything, right? What does law not touch? I think that's what's so cool about this job or this career.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you get to interact a lot with the clerks?
Clerks more so than the judges. Yeah, so I give courthouse tours. So we have students from all over Hastings, Stanford. We have visiting judges from Korea. A lot of people will come in and visit. So we get to do tours, and then what will happen is we set up a question and answer thing, where they can talk to either the judges or the clerks or a staff attorney, whoever we can get. But working with the clerks, a lot of them, they look back at what we're going through right now, and it's nothing. Can you just, they're like, oh yeah, that was a thing, but I went through law school now, and what are you talking about? I'm sitting here refreshing my status checkers every day. How are you not scarred from that? But this is going to become nothing at some point, guys. This LSAT and this application stress, it's just going to move on to, okay, now I'm in law school and grades, and then it's going to become, oh, I got to pass the bar, and then now I'm at a job. And so
Right.
Maybe keep that in mind when you think about it, because it's not the end of your life. Your life does not end with the LSAT, right?
Yeah. It's only the beginning of your legal career.
Yes.
Do you want a clerk after law school, having like so much interaction with the clerks and being at the ninth? Like, is that where you want to take your career?
I would clerk. It looks really stressful though. Some judges, it depends on your judge. Some judges are really hard on their clerks and they don't get a chance to breathe, and some become best friends with their clerks, which is kind of cool. Actually, but from giving the tours to the high schools and people that come, I've actually decided maybe going to teaching. Maybe not being that as my entire job, but I would like to teach with a legal degree on the side as well. And I think
Right.
a lot of people,
Like university level teaching?
maybe younger, even high school, because a lot of people, maybe I was lucky with the schools I went to, but I knew a lot about how our system works. And I have tours that I'll give to people that are in law school even, and they just don't understand. Like, they don't understand what level an appellate court is. They don't understand federal system and how states courts differ from federal courts. And you need to understand, in order for this country to work, and this is gonna, I'm preaching, guys, I'm sorry, but in order for our democracy to do what it needs to do, you guys have to understand it, right? So I want to go in there and push that to feel like, you guys need to get what's going on before you start making all these opinions. Figure out how things are structured.
Yeah.
It's been kind of
that makes
eye-opening
sense.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Mhm.
I mean, I obviously love teaching. So yeah, I hope you do.
Yeah. That would be pretty fun to do.
Okay, so I also wanted to ask about whether you think your military training had any impact on your LSAT studies and just your general outlook on life. Like, how has that changed you as a person?
It has. I'm driven, so my drive after the military has become almost like to the level of obsession. I know what I want. I know how I'm going to get there. I'm going to do what I do to get to that. The 170 was not an option in my mind, and that, like I said, that hurt me in the September test. So don't do that too bad, guys. But being able to take a stressful situation and understand that it's not as bad as you think it is the biggest takeaway the military is going to give to most people. Because I mean, in the military, you're just one stressful situation after another, right? So it's screw the one that just happened. I'm concerned about the one currently happening, and then the one after that. That's my biggest takeaway. I'm able to shrug things off a lot faster, I think, than most people with the military training. And I'm not even super big on the military necessarily, but it does instill a certain set of discipline, and certain people need it. And I was one of those people. I needed that to get focus and to be able to dedicate myself to something instead of just, I'm going to play video games for the rest of my life, go nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we touched upon this earlier, but you're being able to wake up at 4 a.m. I'm guessing that's like because of military. I'm not really sure. Is it?
Maybe so. I used to sleep. I love sleep. I will sleep to the end of the time. But my, I'm a morning person, and maybe it's something you have to find about yourself. But after about 2 o'clock at work or anywhere, I am
Yeah.
incapable of functioning. I can't
Yeah.
think. My work process is slower. I get agitated.
Yeah.
So I figured by,
That's biological.
yeah, I think so.
That's just biological.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the
Yeah.
4 a.m. thing, I would have a cup of coffee, which of course it woke me up. But my mind, that's where I worked best, is in the morning. If I was in the afternoon, I was spinning my wheels in the mud. I wasn't gaining anything from it. It was just me getting frustrated because I was tired and I wanted to take a nap, really. So I think it's a combination. Maybe military did contribute to it, to have the discipline to do it, maybe, I would say. But the desire to study in the morning is more of something that just I have. I'm a morning person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important to realize that about yourself. I know some people are like sort of evening people. I never really got that. I'm definitely a morning person. Around the afternoon, it's like usually around like 3 o'clock for me, 2 or 3 o'clock. A little earlier if I have a big lunch. So actually, I try not to have a big
Yeah.
lunch because of that. But like, I just get sluggish. I don't have the willpower. Like that's when I'm most at risk for like going into a gaming binge. That like never happens in the morning. There's not a danger that I'll just wake up and start playing video
Yeah.
games. But like in the afternoon, it's like somehow like I just lose control over like what I know to do that would be good for me in the long term,
Hmm.
and I just cave to like the short term cravings. So it is very good to recognize that about yourself and just structure your what's important around it. Um, there is nothing wrong with gaming. That's right. I just there's I think there's something it can be excessive, you know,
If
and
you
you don't
if
want
you
it to
drop
take
out of
over.
college and end up with a 2.8,
Yeah,
that's something wrong with gaming there.
that's
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I
Oh
can't
man.
even write anything cool, right? So I can't say, oh, I destroyed my grades because this happened in my life. No, I played a video
Right.
game. I can't write that off.
Or or like nowadays, I mean, this wasn't a thing back when we were younger, but like nowadays you could be like, well, you know, I was like world champion at StarCraft, right? Like I
Yep,
competed in Korea and like I
yep.
won the title. That yeah, okay, it's like okay, you reached the apex of this chosen niche, but like that would be kind of cool. Um but yeah, you couldn't even do that. Back then it's just like, yeah, I just stopped. I didn't take my finals because I was I was doing a raid.
Yep, that's
Um
exactly what it was.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left, and Alex has a question. Alex, all right, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hey.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Can you hear
Hey,
me? Oh, sweet. Hey, what's up, Glenn? Good to
how's
hear
it
from
going?
you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like to ask people this question. Basically, if you were to like restart and kind of plan out your ideal prep, I guess for let's say maybe the next maybe 6 months, what would that look like, and what would you do differently this time around?
That is a great question. I would do a lot differently, and that's what story of my life, right? I would stop looking at my score. I would not let the score predict how I'm studying. I wouldn't use that as an indicator of how well I was doing. Um, I would spend more time in the CC, the core curriculum. I would spend more time there, and I kind of rushed into PTing a little bit. Not too badly. I didn't burn materials terribly, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't just excessively take PTs looking for a score change every time. I would wish that someone would tell me that this test is not like other tests where I could just sit down and take it. I needed to put the time into this test. And I wish I kind of knew that. I wish I would have started a little sooner studying. It's put me off of law school for 3 years, this test alone. I know it doesn't sound like that with how much I studied, but I would have started studying maybe in school beforehand because I thought it was just going to be this test that just passed me by. Um, and I wish I would have maybe been more active in the community. I've never been one to be a person who can study with other people. I try and do things on my own. And I think that actually hurt me. So like I see you guys always have calls going where you're reviewing things together and you get other input from other people. That's invaluable. That's absolutely, and I didn't do it. I just did it on my own because it was me versus the world, right? Instead of using other people and seeing how they thought through a question. And that's enlightening. Seeing how someone else works through a question shows you other ways to attack the test. And that's something that you can't gain on your own. So I would have definitely taken part in the community a little bit more, I think. Plus, I'm a little bit shy of the community in general. I don't feel like, even now, if people ask for help, I don't feel like I'm the right person to go to, type of thing, because I don't feel like I have the mastery even with the score. But those would be definitely, so my takeaways would be start sooner. Don't look at my score as my indicator of what I'm going to do on the test, because the score doesn't matter, it's the questions. Be more active in the community. Listen to other people. Don't think you know everything, because you don't, obviously, right? Those would be my biggest takeaways of the test. And maybe if I'm seeing the burnout question, take breaks, right? This test isn't going anywhere. I mean, even with the GRE coming in now, this test is still going to be one of the big tests, unless they decide, oh, we don't need standardized tests for law school, right? Then don't rush the test. Relax. It's not going anywhere. And Alex tells this to everybody. If you're not ready, don't take it. I've had some outside pressures, family and whatnot, telling me that it's kind of just to do it and I need to get it out of the way. And I let that affect me a little bit. But I ended up stepping back and taking control of my own life, right? And doing what I wanted to do and going for my goal. And sometimes you need to do that. And even if I'm not old, I'm 28, so I'm not old, right? But it's sometimes if your parents are all that has dictated things to you, sometimes you know what's best. They don't know what the LSAT is. Have you tried to talk to other people? I know you guys have. You try to talk to people, I don't know what the LSAT is, and they're just, oh, well, you passed, or oh, well, you got a 160. That's amazing. You're gonna do. They don't understand this test. They don't understand. No one, even if they see a question, will understand this test until they sit down and take an entire timed LSAT. Will they understand what we're going through with this test? So listen to people who know the test. Listen to your community. Listen to don't be afraid to reach out on 7Sage. The community on 7Sage, and I'm going to pander to 7Sage a bit here. It's remarkable. There's no community like 7Sage's community. The people are encouraging. They'll tell you what you need to hear, but they're positive. No other forum on the internet has the positivity that 7Sage has. We kind of police our own, I think, and I love 7Sage.
Well, thank you, and I agree. Well, so we should end it on that note. There's really nothing else anyway. But before I let you go, Glenn, can you let everyone know how, if they want to stay in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, feel free to PM me on 7Sage. I can even put an email in if you want to email me. Again, I don't know if I feel necessarily comfortable tutoring. I will do it, and I will help and answer your questions, but I won't feel confident because I don't think I'm at that level necessarily with my understanding of the test. So if I'm a bit hesitant or I don't answer right away, it's probably not because I don't want to answer. It's probably because I don't want to lead you astray. I will feel responsible if I give you an answer that takes you away from something that's been working for you. So that I'm more likely to lean that way than to just not want to answer you. But anytime you need to PM me, I'm at work. I have 2 monitors, and 7Sage is open from when I get there at 7 until I leave at 4. I refresh it every 5 minutes. So a lot of you might see me responding like instantly to you. That's because I'm there. So I'm easy to get a hold of if you need me on 7Sage.
Great. And Glenn, you're at LSATcantwin on 7Sage on the forums. Well, thank you so much, Glenn. This has been really inspiring for a lot of us here. And thanks again for taking the time to talk to us about your story. Probably in a few months, I'd like to have you and some of the other sages back because I think that it'll be after the application cycle, and just have all you guys talk about what that was like.
Yeah, not a problem. That's it's harder than the LSAT, I'm telling you. It's not fun. And by the way, guys, just so you know, if you apply to 15 schools, each school has their own separate status checker. I don't know what is going on with that. You have to log into 15 different things. It's outrageous.
All right, Glenn. Well, have a good night. Thank you again, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for coming out on Saturday night.
Take care.